Good morning, Rabbosai. Next Sunday morning, we have a special treat. We're going to be meeting in the auditorium instead of in here. But thank you all for coming. Don't let that deter you from coming. Bring your friends. There's still plenty of space. And there'll be plenty of food. This week, we're going to be discussing a bris in the Erev. And it's funny how you never know what kind of situations are going to come up. Pidyon Haben, my son's 30th day, fell out on Shabbos. So the question I actually had to ask my local Orthodox rabbi was, do I do it Saturday night or do I do it Sunday? You never know what's going to come up, even though things might seem like they're out there. So, Baruch Hashem, we have Rabbi Kier who goes into these detailed scenarios, and we get to hear some great, great Torah.
Thank you very much. That is an interesting case you just brought up. Firstly, two little announcements. Firstly, next week, as I said, we hope to have a share in the auditorium. I would like to do, I try to sprinkle these throughout the season, but stories on personalities, halachic personalities. So next week, I hope to give a share on Rav Scheinberg. That's all. And that share will be discussing the halachic personality of Scheinberg. So hope you don't want to miss that. Also, today's share is dedicated Schus Refuah Shlema for the Sharfman grandchild, Tinok ben Rachel. Baruch Hashem, the child has made a lot of progress, but still some mountains to climb. And Bez Hashem, child should have a refuah shlema, be able to have a bris, and only good things. So today's share, I think it's the first part 2 that I'm giving. I guess I gave one about the Seder, it was also a little bit connected. But it's entitled "The Bris Without a Bagel," part 2. About a year and a half ago, we gave a share about the Shabbos bris. That's one scenario you could have a bris without a bagel. But today's share will be use the same title, but it's about a bris in the early evening. And firstly, we picked to talk about this topic. I get a lot of feedback, whether it's from people here or the people listening, watching, wherever they are. And some of the shiurim that generate the most buzz are practical halachas, especially around life cycles. It sounds like there's a lot of children that have been named based on our share with naming. It's right and left. Just the past couple of weeks, 2 people had kids, and they told me, "Oh, we named your daughter based on the share." I'm like, "Okay, great. I got to be careful what I say." I thought I had a lot to say back in the day when I was a gabbai in yeshiva, naming kids, but it sounds like now it's even more. So I figured today's concept, today's share, is not really just about an early afternoon bris, but really the whole concept of when to quote unquote schedule a bris, and as ramifications for people with their own children, as a grandparent. You sometimes also have a say, and it's good to know the halacha. Now, if I'll ask people over here, how many times have they been at a bris which took place in the early evening? Not so common. Not so common. It happens. I could think of myself, I've been at a couple, but I think it's even more common to be at a Shabbos bris than a bris that takes place in the early evening. And there are specific reasons why. I'll get to the moment. Maybe I should ask, has anyone been ever at a night bris? I hope not. But we'll talk about that. But even uncommon scenarios when it comes to bris, things happen. Just in this neighborhood, in North Miami Beach, since the beginning of the year, there was a bris in this neighborhood on the first day of Rosh Hashanah. There was a bris here in the neighborhood on the second day of Rosh Hashanah. All shilos in Rosh Hashanah, when do you make the bris? There's a bris in the neighborhood on Yom Kippur. And there was a bris in the neighborhood, actually here in Yeshiva, on Simchas Torah. Talk about brisim all days of the year, types of scenarios and situations. They happen. I just gave you 4 examples. So, what I'd like to do today is go through the halachas, especially relevant. This week's parsha talks about the whole mitzvah of bris milah. So we figured we'll touch on the topic, the background of when do you schedule a bris, what is it based on, and hopefully people will be able to take away a lot from it. I must say, I don't usually give coming attractions within a share, but to end today's share, a friend of mine just called me up Friday afternoon and says, "Did you hear this story? You ever hear such a story like this?" He sent me a whole story which was unbelievable. And I'd like to share. I think it fits in today's theme too. So, firstly to begin, and on your sheets I put the Aruch HaShulchan for hopefully easy reading. On the middle of the sheets, when do we do a bris milah? So we all know Zman Hamila b'Yom Hashmini v'lo kodem. From the first Torah, a bris has to be on the 8th day. One can't do it earlier. So that's one aspect. The bris is on the 8th day and not earlier. But there's a second aspect, very important. V'davka b'Yom v'lo b'layla. You have to do a bris during the day. Practically, that means before Shkia, but not after, not at night. And it's based on a Gemara in Yevamis, a Darshan Hashmini Yimo, Yachol Bein B'Yom U'Bein B'Layla. You would think you do the bris any time in the 8th day, night, day. Tamalomer B'Yom. Learn it out to other cases too. Aruch HaShulchan brings later major dispute within the Rishonim. But what happens if a person does a bris at night? In fact, one of the brisim that I was at, quote unquote, in the early evening, my wife was reminding me of the story. We're at a bris, and Jewish time, the young parents of the child were a little late. But here's the big deal. When you start getting close to Shkia, I'll show you go after Shkia, you could potentially have big problems. Because if you did do a bris at night, the Ramah Paskins, you know what you have to do? A do-over. There's a concept of a toughest dam bris. If you did the bris nighttime, which is invalid to do a bris, the Ramah Paskins, you got to do it again. You got to do a toughest dam bris, which is even more chamor than if you, let's say, a person for whatever reason ended up doing the bris before the 8th day. What happens in that scenario? We just said that's also a no-no. The bris has to specifically be on the 8th day. What happens if it somehow was done beforehand? So there, the Ramah would paskin that you're yotze. You should have done that, but b'diavad it works. In that scenario, the Ramah paskins you don't have to do a toughest dam bris. You don't have to do it again. Now we showed them others that argue. It sounds like the Aruch HaShulchan paskins this way. So, just by itself, hopefully no one was ever at a nighttime bris. Baruch Hashem, if you have a nice, good, firm moel, I assume they'll be on top of these situations not to do it. But what I know of is quite interesting. Rabbi Pesach Kron, through all the years, never put on a beard. Nice, clean-shaven rabbi. And the reason he says behind it is because he's a big mall. Just the other day in yeshiva, we had Chashav Rav, used to be a Rav in the Five Towns, now he's a Rav in West Palm Beach. He told me, he's also a mole, he did, I think his number was 5,000 brisim. But he's not with Pesach Kron. Pesach Kron, 10 times that amount, probably more. But Pesach Kron, I know, does brisim not just for Orthodox Jews, but also for non-Orthodox Jews. Many times he's called all different scenarios all over New York. He's a well-known all over the world, and he connects with, even non-Orthodox Jews, which is a wonderful thing, right? Another good thing, if you ever encourage somebody, who's not religious, obviously to have a bris, but it should be performed by an Orthodox mall, because you need the halacha straight. Imagine, some secular Jewish kid. Unfortunately, I'm sure there are those that don't have a bris. But the parents decide we're going to have a bris, and it's done by, it can be done by a doctor, which that itself could be a problem. You need to have ideally an Orthodox Jewish person doing it, and it could be an Orthodox Jewish doctor. And they get someone that doesn't really know what they're doing, and there are many halachas. This is one important halacha: the timing of a bris. The bris has to be done on the 8th day. Okay, done earlier, perhaps there might be a tzad yotze, but if it's done at night, it didn't work. You got to do it again. So the halachas of our bris are important. That's why it's critical that a person has a proper mole involved in the process. So that's the first step. Has to be done on the 8th day, has to be done during the day. What time during the day? When should one do a bris? So that's a Gemara in Pesachim. Gemara in the beginning of Pesachim is debating the time for B'dikas Chametz, Bittul Chametz, and the Gemara brings up the concept of Zrizim Akdimim L'Mitzvos, that someone who is into doing a mitzvah as a zariz, so they would do the mitzvah as soon as possible. And the example the Gemara brings, Kol Yom Kosher L'Mila, the whole daytime is kosher to do a bris milah. El Shezrizim Akil Mitzvos, to do it in the morning. And it quotes a pasuk, Shenemar V'Yashkim Avram Baboker. Sounds like there's machlokas between Tosos, maybe some of the other Mefarshim, Torah or on the side of the Gemara. Pashtus is pasuk by Avram Avinu, as we'll see soon, is not by Avram Avinu's bris, nor by Yitzchak's bris. The way Tosos learns is actually by the Akedah. But the Gemara is using the concept in general of Zrizim Makdim mitzvahs. When you're doing a mitzvah, you wake up early in the morning to do it. So that's what Avram Avinu did this coming week's parsha by the Akedah. So we say, so too by Bris Milah, do a bris early in the morning. See, in a moment people ask, so why don't we do briskim, crack of dawn? Do it by davening. Okay, we'll get to that. The Aruch HaShulchan explains. So we see there's a concept. Zriz Makdim L'Mitzvos. The whole day is good for Bris Milah. But with the concept of Zriz Makdimim, we would say they should do it earlier. How much earlier? So classically, what? We do a bris at the end of davening. After davening. That's classically when we do a bris. Why is this concept Zriz Makdimim? This Gemara itself talks specifically about a bris. There's another Gemara that talks about a bris. So if you look at the middle paragraph of the Aruch HaShulchan, about 8 lines from the bottom. So the Aruch HaShulchan has a very important clarification. He writes the following. Avo b'mila shuchosim bris kodesh. What is a bris milah? It's the signing of this, finishing off of this covenant with Hashem. Uvezen nichnas l'kedusha, and through a bris, a child gets another major level of kedusha, of holiness. Yesh peda gdola shel ha'achra. There's tremendous hakpada. We're very careful. There's a tremendous responsibility that you shouldn't push off a bris. That's why in the Brisa, or really even in this Gemara Psachim, they specifically quote Zriza Makdima when it comes to the mitzvah of Milah. The Yeshon Litzavach, right? The Aruch HaShulchan doesn't scream so much. But here is one example where the Aruch HaShulchan is screaming. Wow. Quite loud. We should scream. Al minhag zmanenu. This is already taking place in Europe, where the Aruch HaShulchan was the Rav. On the minhag in our times, Shema akram amila kama sholos bayom. They make a milah many hours into the day. Mimnei shtuchim, because of the people coming. Shmobol kol akarim. V'domeh shtuchim ke'ela, shtusim ke'ela. Right? All these silly things. Look at these shtusim people do. Well, maybe for more people to come. Right? Once we change the clocks, right? Sunrise is quite early. So if you do a 9 o'clock chakra Sunday morning till you get to the bris, right? It shows what time it is. It could be close to 10 o'clock. That's quite a few hours into the day. So the Aruch HaShulchan is screaming. Look at the shtusim. People wait so late to do a bris. He says there are even places. Some people, hey, Sunday morning people wake up late. We're not going to do a breakfast. We'll do a brunch. Sunday morning brunch for a bris. Yeah, they'll do it after Chatzos. The language of the Aruch HaShulchan, vu avon plili, very bad sin. Very strong language from the Aruch HaShulchan. So he's telling us, look, is the mitzvah the whole day? Yeah. Technically speaking, if you did a bris, as long as it's before Shkia, you do it 4 o'clock in the afternoon, you're yotzei. You don't have to do a do-over. You did it at 8 o'clock at night, it's past Shkia, that's a problem. But you do it. 4 o'clock in the afternoon, Shkia here is later, you're yotzei. However, you're missing out the concept of zriza makdim and lemitzvos, which is a general concept. When you have a chance to do a mitzvah, you do it right away. The Aruch HaShulchan is perhaps arguing that it's more so depending how big the mitzvah is. Being the fact that bris milah is a very big mitzvah, so that should be done especially with zrizos, as quickly as possible, as early as possible. And therefore he says people who push off a bris milah uses language as a shtus. Silly thing. Especially if they end up pushing it off past chatzos, which we see already is a different cutoff, past midday, that's a big problem. You can't do a bris so late. And if you're going to do a bris so late, the language of the Aruch HaShulchan is an avon plili. Big time sin.
In the Bagel we discussed if you have spread by Hadis Malach and having a smaller menu that was earlier.
It's an excellent point. I'm going to get to that. Right? Perhaps we'll give, and we'll have to give, some heterim to push a bris to later in the day. But what you see first off from this Aruch HaShulchan is you should always try to do a bris as early as possible. As a general rule, we'll get some exceptions. As a general rule, you should do it as early as possible. That's within the day. But for sure, one should try to do it before Chatzos. Again, you yotzei if you do it past Chatzos, as long as it's before nighttime. But one should be careful to do it before Chatzos. He says if you push it off past Chatzos, he's already using the language as an avon plili. It's a super duper sin. Okay? So we hear the Aruch HaShulchan, yeah?
I think he's connecting the idea of avon plili with the shtusim. Seems to me.
So you're starker than I am. I'm not sure.
He's not saying that there can't be some compelling reason,
Yeah.
legitimate reason for putting it a little later, because he's not arguing with the idea that if you do it before Shkia, it's still mutter. It's still
Right. But I think it's still, I'm reading a little different than that. I'm saying that there's 2 levels. No one, it's a shtus, it's silly, you shouldn't push it off later into the day. You shouldn't have, a 10 o'clock bris, or 11 o'clock bris. You shouldn't do that. But to go past chatzos, past midday, that's what he's calling avon plili. Not every little thing you push off. 9 o'clock bris, maybe you shouldn't do it. 10 o'clock, you shouldn't do it. It's not avon plili. Past chatzos, that could be it's a bad thing. That's what he's talking about. Now, this is all background for a question that I'd like to ask on this week's parsha. Okay? So now we know the basics of timing of a bris milah, 8th day, specifically during the day. The Zriza Makdim Mitzvahs tells us we should do it as early as possible. Definitely before Chatzos. But even after Chatzos, it all works. Okay? So we have different levels. So the Torah talks about in this week's parsha, Avraham Avinu got a bris milah at the age of 99. Big deal. Very big. Very, I'm sure, difficult. It's considered one of the major nisyonos of Avraham Avinu's life. Interesting. Where Pesach Kron wasn't around in those days. Who's Avraham Avinu's mom? He did not do it himself. At least according to the Medrash I'm about to quote to you. And what's very interesting, very, very interesting, it wasn't Eliezer, and it wasn't Mamre. Let's throw out all the names of the old people out there, right? Right? It was Shem ben Noach. And the reason why I specifically used Shem, Medrash says, was because he needed the bris, it had to be performed by someone who himself wasn't an Aro, wasn't someone who didn't have a bris. Shem was born with the bris. It's interesting. He was born circumcised. So Shem was the one who performed the bris in Avram Avinu. This Medrash says. Now this Medrash originates, it's a Pirkei de Rebbe Lazar, it's on the bottom of your sheets, except here's the problem. For those of you watching at home, following on the website we should have up the right Pirkei de Rebbe Lazar. I found this piece, and I thought I found a better print. So I put the better print on your sheets, except it left out a couple lines. It didn't have what I wanted. So I feel bad. So I redid it on the website. It'll have the correct Marmakom. But the Pirkei de Rebbe Lazar is Perach of Tes. It says, Kara l'Shem ben Noach. So Avram Avinu called up Shem ben Noach. Must have had his card, somewhere hanging up. Mole services. Sarah also that Shem gave the bris to Avram Avinu, Yishmael beno, and to Yishmael be'etzem hayom hazeh. The pasuk said that Avram Avinu had the bris, literally be'etzem hayom hazeh, in the middle of the day. Rashi says that's what the same time Noach went into the teva in the middle of the day. Multiple things in the Torah talks about. It was done be'etzem hayom hazeh. So you know what the Medrash says? What does that mean? Be'etzem yom gvuras hashemesh. When the sun is at its peak, b'chatzi hayom, middle of the day, be'aser lachodesh b'yom kippurim. 10th of the month is actually on Yom Kippur. Okay? So the Medrash is saying what time of the day? Okay, it happened on Yom Kippur. We know all the stats. Avram Avinu's bris, 99 years old. Shem was the one who performed it. When did the bris take place? On Yom Kippur. And when was the bris? In the middle of the day. So I just found this out. Pretty interesting thing. This Pirkei de Rebbe Lazar appears in the Yalkut Shimoni. The Yalkut Shimoni is a famous collection of midrashim. In the bottom of the page in the Yalkut Shimoni, there's a little thing called the Zayis Ranan. That is a perush written by the Magen Avram. Same Magen Avram, the halachic source on the side of the page in the Shulchan Aruch. The Magen Avram wrote a perush on, or has random points throughout the Yalkut Shimoni. He has a point on this medrash. Very simple question. The Magen Avram is bothered by how could Avram Avinu have a bris in the middle of the day? That's not the time to do a bris. You should do the bris in the beginning of the day. Zrizim akdim l'mitzvos. What happened to Zrizim akdim l'mitzvos? And I'll blow up the kasha twofold. Where do we learn out Zrizim akdim l'mitzvos from? Vayashkim Avram Avoker. He's Mr. Zrizus. That might have been by the Akedah. But why didn't he use his Zrizus powers when it came to the Bris Milah? He'll tell me after the bris he got extra power. Avram Avinu, who we're talking about over here. And let me just top it off. Especially according to what we just saw in the Aruch HaShulchan. Right? You push it off. He says that's a big deal. One, it's shtus. Was Avram Avinu a shtus macher?
He's on Kippur. You have to wait.
Right?
All that long shoppers.
Good answer. We'll get to that in a second. Yeah?
I was going to say the same thing. Practicality today, the only day of the year that we would most likely end up doing that is Yom Kippur.
So, okay. So we'll try this answer first. So some people in the audience here want to say, since it was Yom Kippur, so we know Avram Avinu kept the Torah. So Mustama, Avram Avinu was davening all morning, in shul because it's Yom Kippur. So that's why he waited past Chatzos. So I mentioned before, one of the interesting bris that we had in this neighborhood was a bris on Yom Kippur. Last night I went to speak to the person, the Avia Ben. I heard rumors that they were going to do the bris during the break. Right? When do you have time to do a bris on Yom Kippur? So yeah, during a break. So that's why I heard rumors they were going to do the bris. So I went to ask him, because based on when I went through the sugya here, you should be doing a bris during the break. That's not exactly the best time. He said, no, don't worry. We did it before Chatzos. We did it right after Shacharis, before Yizkor. We did the bris on Yom Kippur morning. It was before Chatzos. So even in Yom Kippur, they do it before Chatzos. What's pshat here in Avram Avinu? That he's doing a bris later. He didn't know his reason makdim the mitzvahs. Can't be. He wasn't chicken. So why did Avram Avinu push it off? So some Chashav of Talmud Chacham that I asked this question to wanted to tell me like this. He was a good Jew, Avram Avinu. He knew all the halachas. He knows everything that we're talking about today. So he knows you have to do it before Chatzos. So he did it right before Chatzos. That's what the Medrash means. That was done at midday, at the point. He did it at midday, right before Chatzos, at the climax of the sun. That's when he did it. So, L'maisa, that also, Pashas is not a good answer. It's definitely not what the Magen Avram was assuming. Magen Avram is attacking this. He's asking on this medrash, how can we explain Avram Avinu? And he doesn't give this answer. So the Pashtus is, no, when the medrash says that he did it in the middle of the day, it meant he did it in the middle of the day, even past Chatzos. So how can we understand that? Take another try.
Is it possible that he waited because more people would be there?
Excellent. See, this is, the shir runs an autopilot. One suggestion to the next. That's the next move. So, actually on my sheet, that was my second to next move, but you brought it up. I spoke about it, so I gotta go there. So one potential idea you just brought up is the concept of Berov Am Hadras Melech. That when you do a mitzvah, you should do a mitzvah with a crowd, ideally. Right? That was brought up before. We learn Megillah, Berov Am Hadras Melech. Right? We want to do it in a big fashion. I'll be talking about this. I plan on giving a special share about this too. But everyone's making big plans for the Siyam HaShas. There's going to be a Siyam HaShas, hopefully, snow permitting, in the football stadium, MetLife Stadium, on January 1st in New York. Expecting 100,000 people over there. Right? If you got gelt, you know to get a luxury box. You don't want to be out there in the elements. But I think here in Florida, they plan on having a Siyam. I'm sure all around the U.S., the world, they'll be marking the Siyam HaShas of Daf Yomi, and really just Limud Torah. So there's a concept. Why are we doing it in MetLife Stadium? Over here in South Florida, to give a plug, I believe there's going to be an event in Signature Grand, pretty big place. Why are they doing it in such a big spot? The answer is Berov Am Hadras Melech. When you're performing a mitzvah, it's a wonderful thing. It's a Kiddush Hashem to do it in a big, grandiose fashion. So maybe Avram Avinu pushed off his bris to get more people. You know, the people of his generation. Right? They didn't get up so early in the morning. Layashkim Avram Baboka. No one else got up that early. So Avram Avinu, maybe he waited to do it later for people. And some people even interject that that's what the Magen Avram's answer is. I have the language of the Zayis Ranan in the back. So some people want to think that that's what the Magen Avram wants to answer. And really this concept comes up. There are other scenarios in life where it's a shaila, what comes first? Zriz Makdimim or Rov Am Hadras Melech? I remember a few years ago, and this is a share I don't plan on giving for the next 20-something years. Famous concept of Birchas Hachama, right? You make a bracha, there are cycles of the sun, basically every 27, 28 years. This is a Birchas Hachama. So I remember the last time around, and there was a big dispute when to do it. Do you do it first thing in the morning? You see the sun, the Zriz Makdim Mitzvos? Or do you say, no, let's make a whole gathering. This is a mitzvah that only happens, bracha we could say, every 28 years. So we'll do a big gathering. I forgot, they had all these places, there are like different spots to watch it. Like somehow, like in the middle of the U.S., St. Louis area, they had like some camping trip. Everyone went out to some like open land over there. There's a lot of spots like that. Midwest. So yeah, they drove on. They had a whole watch party. Let's go watch sunrise and see it. So yeah. So there, that's a shayla of Zriz Makdimim, to do it as early as possible. Same time, we'll get a bigger crowd a little bit later. So maybe do it later. So that's what people are suggesting. That was Avraham thinking. Let's push it off a little later because we'll get a bigger crowd. However, Chura, one can't say that. Because there are multiple poskim, amongst them the Pirkei Yosef, who is the Chidah, says that we actually believe that Zriz Makdimim is a greater principle than Barov Am Hadras Melech. They're doing it with a big group. Zriz Makdimim comes first. And you think about it, that's pretty practical. I'll give you another scenario. A person has a choice. I could daven early minyan, shachar, I could daven nates, or I could daven the regular shul minyan. More people are at. Rov Am Hadras Melech, I could daven later. Maybe you'll say that's a little different. Maybe it's the difference between tefillah and forming a mitzvah together. But tefillah is also elements of a mitzvah together. So we say, the Pirkei Yosef says, that Zriz Makdimim takes precedence over Rov Am Hadras Melech, of doing it with more people. So that couldn't be the reason behind Avraham Avinu.
Tefillah is different, though. So it's a mitzvah is to do the thing.
Okay, that could be.
It's not
Practical means you didn't get the devote till 11 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah, channels weren't open. So let me go through for a moment this last paragraph of the Aruch HaShulchan. I think it's important. You see the way he defines Zriz Makdimim. He himself gives us potentially another qualification, another idea to potentially push it off. He writes, Ve'enu Tmua, the last paragraph of that Aruch HaShulchan. Side of it's chopped off. The Kivin is Zriz Makdimim mitzvos. Lama Yimol Kolam Atfila. Hey, Zriz Makdimim is a big idea. Why don't we give a bris milah before davening? Right? It should be a cut and then pray. So he says, Zizei Yavsher. Firstly, the Chada Tefillah hi mitzvah tedira. Tefillah is a mitzvah which is more constant. Tadir v'she'eno tadir kodem. So tefillah is more constant, and therefore that comes first. Secondly, he writes, V'yish bo harbe mitzvos. Mitzvah tzitzis, tefillin, kriya shema, tefillah. So within our davening, we do multiple mitzvahs. So it wouldn't be right to do one mitzvah before I have the chance to do this whole collection of mitzvahs together. Okay? Then he writes another idea. V'od, sherei mitzvah laso suda. There's a mitzvah after bris milah to make a suda. The kodem atfilo yachol atam. But you can make a suda before davening. Very interesting. This last reason that the Aruch HaShulchan is bringing why do you push off potentially? Why don't we do it earlier? Excuse me. Do Zriz Makdim and do the bris before davening? He says because part of the idea of a bris is there's a mitzvah to make a suda afterwards. If you're going to make the suda afterwards, that means you'll be eating before davening. You can't do it. So let me ask a simple kasha. So why don't you just do it like this? Do the bris before davening, then daven, then have a suda afterwards. The answer is, ideally the suda should be immediately after davening, immediately after the bris. The normal procedure for a bris milah is one should have the bris followed by a suda. In fact, some people suggested to me, one of the times you'll find the bris sometimes pushed off, is brought up as by a fast day. And that was one of the bris that I was at in the early afternoon. You do the bris before Shkia, and then they had a suda basically after the Marav, after the Zman. And there they had the suda very close to the bris. So there's a concept. You try to have a suda close to the bris. People sometimes push these things off. I saw Rav Moshe had a very interesting tshuva. This is not in the Igros Moshe. It's in the Sefer Mesoros Moshe, put out by Moshe's grandchildren. That there once was a child whose bris was pushed off for 30 days. The child wasn't well, and this is the first child in that family. So it had, the same day the child was ready to have a bris, he was also ready to have a pidyon aben. And the question was, how to go about it. First thing they asked, well, you're allowed to have, could you have one suda for both? Good Jewish shiloh, right? Save some money. Usually your oldest, it needs a pidyon aben, it's going to cost you twice. So here, look, fortunately the child wasn't well, wasn't able to have a bris right away, but they pushed it off 30 days. They pushed it off 30 days. So they had the bris the same day as the pidyon aben. Is there a problem of ein marvin simcha b'simcha? We don't mix simchas together. So that Rav Moshe says no problem. You can have the bris and the pidyon aben together, suda, right? It's a bogo. You're all good. But then he asked, okay, yeah, what comes first? How do you go about doing it? Right? Now, a lot of times,
It has to be a very specific, it has to be 30 full days. So
right, it has to be 30 full days, true.
It could be that after a week.
Well, the bris also
Right.
has to be 8 full days
But-
of help.
Yeah, but
From the
he
time
said,
someone is helping.
what was the Shaila?
Which comes first?
So he said to do the bris first, and then pidyon aben. So they were asking, well, maybe they should do, a lot of times in America, they do these pidyon abens later in the afternoon. So Moshe says, yeah, it's a shtick in America. In Europe, they didn't do it that way. They did the pidyon aben as long as it was a full 30 days. 100%, they were doing it in the morning too. And there, they were asking, it could be, I think the question was, they were asking, well, shouldn't you do the suda right after the bris? So Moshe said, no, for this, for sure, you can do the pidyon aben, the bris, the pidyon aben, the suda, it's all good.
Do you have to have the name of a child before you can do the pidyon aben?
No. I did it.
You should have, right.
I had to put it in bed 3 months before bris, so
Right,
I had to do it.
right. Yeah, the Kohen doesn't have to know the kid's name. Right? It's like a joke I heard the other day. I can't resist. It's a rabbinic joke. You know, sometimes I just heard that Rav Ruderman Zatzal, it's Rav Yaakov Weinberg, decried the fact, Shiva Ner Yisrael, that in America it's quite common for people, you know, especially in the bigger cities, you have what they call minion factories. People could live their entire existence without personal Rav. So that's a topic unto itself. It's very important for people to have a rabbinic connection, to have a Rav. And you could go from, the big cities have these mini factories, right? So you could daven the entire week, a different time of the day, different mini factory. And every Shabbos you could hop a different shul, right? 5 shuls down your block. And you never really have a connection with one Rav. What happens, a life cycle thing. Bris, wedding, funeral. Oh, there are rabbis that do funerals, rabbis that do this. So you had a rabbi one time, he's getting up there giving his generic speech because someone hired him to do a levaya. And he's speaking nice things about the nifter, and then all of a sudden he notices, I actually know him. He really is a nice guy. Right? Something over here, it's not gonna work. But so potentially you want to have the Bris Suda together with the Bris, and I've came about stories. Maybe it's not even Rovam Hadras Melech, but you want people to be there. Let's say you have grandparents flying in, and the plane gets delayed. One potentially push off a Bris. It's a shayla. These things are not pasha, but sometimes there are heterim. Someone just told me last night, within the Feinstein family, there was a Bris in Yeshiva Staten Island. Rosh Yeshiva's son was making a Bris, and they ended up pushing off the Bris to a little bit. I'm pretty sure he told me the Bris was in the afternoon. I think even past Chatzos. The reason was for the father-in-law or the grandparents to come in, and the father got up at the Bris. All that he spoke about was that it was this kasha. How could you do a Bris later in the afternoon? Ziz Makdimim. You got to do it earlier. But explaining the heterim for people to be there, sometimes you could push it off. So Rovam Hadras Melech in general, we wouldn't use to push off a Bris. We'd say Ziz Makdimim, you should do it earlier. Practically, the Rabbanim say as long as it's before Chatzos, there's wiggle room. Especially family is another important aspect. It's not just having more of a crowd, family there, grandparents there. Okay, there's wiggle room definitely up until Chatzos. Past Chatzos, not so simple, but there are heterim sometimes. Yes.
Abraham's scenario may have been slightly different in that nobody else had done this, so he was the teacher, and he had to show everyone this is what you need to do.
So once again, they prep me well, right? For all those watching at home, this is obviously a chashava audience we have here. And that is exactly, I believe, what the Magen Avraham answers. You look in the back of your sheets, the tiritz, she'asa b'kavana, lefarsim neged b'nei doro. It's not mashma, it's just a general, you want the big crowd there. Avram Avinu viewed his life, my life's purpose is to spread monotheism in the world. My life's purpose is to be Mekadeh Shem Hashem. That means everything I do, people are going to be watching. I'm Avram Ivri. I'm Avram on one side of the world, everyone else is on the other side of the world. So you realize this is an important lesson. So he felt it was Kedai, even though it's past Chatzos, even though it's lacking in Zriza Makdimim. Right? One can even say by Avram Avinu, be careful how I say it, maybe Avram Avinu wasn't really past Chatzos. But part of the whole question was, it's still late. Either way you say it. Still he's missing out on Zriza Makdimim. So the answer is, for Kiddush Hashem, on that level, it's Kedai to do such a thing. You can push it off. I could see somebody who's involved nowadays, practically, someone involved in Kiruv. And if he's going to make a bris, all the non-affiliated people, this might be the first bris that they're at. So, based on this Magen Avraham, that'll be a heter, one to push it off, debate maybe past Chatzos, before Chatzos. But one would be allowed, perhaps, based on this Magen Avraham, to push it off, if we make a Kiddush Hashem.
So why don't you do that by the Akeda? We'll see him going.
It could be that Akeda was harder to explain. That's a good question, right?
Why did he need to teach other people that?
Yeah, the Akeda, that was, as a rabbi, not everything is out there. That's a little tough. So far what we've been through in the share is a general idea of how one has to try to do a bris as early as possible, Zriza Makdimim, and potential Aterim to push it off a little bit, ideally not before Chatzos, but even sometimes before Chatzos, post Chatzos, as long as it's not nighttime. There's one important qualification I must give. We're talking till now about a regular bris, for the most part, we've been talking about regular bris performed on the 8th day. But unfortunately, we know there are many situations where a child is not well, even just be simply, right, child's yellow, and they can't do the bris bismana. That's why it's a big bracha, do a bris bismana. They can't do the bris bismana, they push it off. Okay? So you push it off. So whenever you get clearance, Hejman with the doctors, with the rabbi, fine. Then you can go and do the bris. And that's also a lot of times why probably Sunday is the most common time to do a bris of all the days. Because all the brisim that get pushed off, you can't do it on Shabbos. So the Mela, Sunday gets double duty of any other day. Plus it works out great for people, it's Sunday. But there's an important idea, this is a Sharat Tzion, but it's also a Shalz Chuvas Devar Avram, mentioned in the back of your sheets. When you're talking about a case of where the bris was pushed off, for whatever reason, there, the idea to do the bris as early as possible might be more of a factor than just Zriza Makdimim. Okay, today's the day we're going to do a bris. So Zriza Makdimim, I want to be zealous and do it as quick as possible. There's more than that. When you're in a scenario where the bris was pushed off, so every moment the child doesn't have a bris, that might be itself, it's past the 8th day already. That itself might be a halachic impetus that you have to do the bris as soon as possible. Now practically, I have from Mirabel Feinstein says you don't have to do it at the first thing in the morning. You wouldn't say you have to do it before davening. But in a case like that, that's a trickier thing to get a heter to do it later in the day.
You have to do it later in the day in many cases also, because if the baby was sick or whatever the medical thing was, so then you actually have to start counting 8 days from the time that they were being healthy.
Excellent point. You're right. Sometime, right, when you're counting the 8 days from the time the child is healthy, so you're counting it from the moment you got the clearance from the doctor. So you're right. If you go me'ez la'ez, so it could come out that bris would be in the middle of the day. Don't jump on a guy when you hear, oh, he's having a bris, the bris is pushed off to the afternoon. That doesn't mean he's doing a bad thing. That it could be a perfect example. I'm doing the afternoon, that's the earliest time you can do it. But what I'm talking about is a case, okay, it got clearance, it could be done on this period, this day. So there, one shouldn't push it off past the time, because there you could run into this issue more than Zriza Makdimim. But every moment there might be an isser for that child not to have a bris. And therefore it's incumbent upon you to do that bris as quickly as possible.
Why don't you have the same thing on every regular baby, 8 days? Because,
Yeah.
so why don't you have the same problem on even if the baby's healthy?
The difference is, I guess, is that there's a difference between once it's pushed off, so there's a bigger impetus every moment you didn't do the mitzvah. It was pushed off. It means you had the chance. In these cases, I didn't really have the chance, but it was a period to do it. You weren't able to do it.
It also, by the way, can't be, once you're pushing it off, the well would not allow us to do it Friday either. You can't do it Erev Shabbos. It also couldn't be, we ended up doing ours, it was Chol Hamoed Sukkos.
So you did it Thursday evening.
No, we did it the Sunday afternoon. It ended up being that way. We weren't even sure when it was going to be you know,
Yeah.
deemed healthy and all that stuff. So it was like, oh, but if it happens on this day, then I can't even do it until it was a whole. It was really wild. So
Wow.
yeah.
So, yes.
The midrash with Moshe Rabbeinu.
Excellent point.
Didn't do it.
Right? This concept, beautiful proof, 3 for 3. Beautiful proof to this concept that once a bris is pushed off, every moment perhaps is a big deal. Right? We have by Moshe Rabbeinu, Parsha Shemos, where he delayed the bris and he almost lost his life. Hashem almost punished him big time for such an offense. Luckily, Tzipora got involved and gave a bris. That self deserves a share. But, okay? So the general thing one should emerge from this share, as a parent, you try to get the bris as quick as possible. As a grandparent, try to let your kids make the bris as quick as possible. Right? Try to schedule flights in to work things out that should start on time. And really, seemingly every moment you could do it earlier, within reason, for sure before Chatzos, definitely post Chatzos. Every moment you could do it earlier, it's a big deal. It's the reason Makdimim. And Chasham and Bris got delayed, then all the more so, there's more impediment on a person to do it as quick as possible. In fact, I saw Rav Moshe rules, if you have 2 babies in a shul, one's bris is this day, the other baby's bris was pushed off to this day. Which one goes first? So Moshe thinks Pasha should be the one that was pushed off for this same reason, because every moment he missed out, he should go first. First in, first out. I'd like to, though, end with an amazing story. This story, I think, fits our theme of the person should always try to follow halacha the way the halacha states. And as the Aruch HaShulchan wrote, don't look for shtosim, don't look for silly reasons to push off not doing halacha the exact way. You should try to do simply follow halacha the way we should. Now you're not going to believe the story I'm about to tell you. But this story I could verify. A friend of mine sent it to me. It was publicized just this week by Rabbi Yisachar Franz from Baltimore. He heard this story from Chashav Yid, Rabbi Yosef Chaim Goldring. It's actually a father-in-law, Golding, of one of my friends, our friends. And he heard it from the protagonist himself. The story, we'll call him Ben. And the story was said at Shiva for Mr. Joseph Kamenetsky. Mr. Joseph Kamenetsky, Allah Shalom, passed away years ago, was involved in the heads of Torah Masorah, organization for spreading Torah across America, and he personally was involved in the opening of many, many day schools across the country. So, while the family was sitting Shiva, a frum person walks in, and the family is looking, no one recognizes this guy. This guy introduces himself, my name is Ben, I have a story to tell you. I grew up out of town in a non-observant family, but my parents sent me to a Jewish day school. Jewish school I went as a kid. And like many parents, look, they wanted me to get a Jewish education. They sent me to the school. As a young kid, under 10. One day, my father was taking me somewhere. It was a rush to go. And I'm sitting in my room, and he tells me to go. Okay, I quickly get dressed. Then 2 minutes later, my father comes back. What's taking so long? So the guy said, I have to retie my shoes. You have to retie your shoes? What's the matter? He's like, I put them on the wrong way. You're supposed to put your right shoe, then your left shoe, and then tie your left shoe, then tie your right shoe. Who taught you that? That's why I learned in school. The father was so upset. This is the craziness they're teaching you in that school. That was the end of my Jewish schooling. The father pulled him out of yeshiva, went to public school. Unfortunately, the rest is history. He was just another statistic of kids who unfortunately didn't get a yeshiva education. He ended up not religious, to the extent he met a nice Catholic girl and was engaged to her. Ben says over, on the day of my wedding, I'm getting dressed in my tux, put on my nice new pair of shoes. I bent down to tie my shoes, and it hit me. I tied my left shoe before my right shoe. And I asked myself, why am I tying my left shoe before my right shoe? He remembered that's something I learned back in the day in yeshiva. He's like, that aspect of Judaism I keep, but I'm going to marry out of the faith. I'm going to have my kid not be Jewish. He called her up. He left her at the altar. That's it. He decided I have to go off to yeshiva. And that's what he did. He went to Eretz Yisrael, went to one of the Baalei Tshuva yeshivas, and became a Baal Tshuva. Amazing story. But it doesn't end there. Unfortunately, Baalei Tshuva, it's a nice, inspiring story, but life is not all rosy. You always have challenges anytime in Yiddishkeit. Rosh came Baalei Tshuva, life isn't easy. And he succeeded, he learned well in yeshiva. But when he re-entered the parsha of Shidduchim, not easy to find the shidduch for Baal Tshuva. And he dated girl after girl. At one point he was discussing with the Rosh Yeshiva, what should he do? He's dated, it's not going. The Yeshiva says, I have an idea. But let me ask you a question. Are you ready to, quote unquote, lower your standards? I know you want to marry a nice religious girl, but would you marry someone from a background, a Gioris, convert? Would you be willing to do that? He said, look, yeah, it's worth a try. Why not? And as fate would have it, it was read to him the same girl that he left at the altar years ago. When she found out, look, he's giving up everything because of his Judaism, she decided unto herself, I want to look into Judaism. And their paths came back years later.
That's right.
You see from here, a person just simply keeps mitzvahs. What's a simple mitzvah? Tying your shoe. How to do it. All the more so, when to do a bris milah. How to schedule these things. As the Aruch HaShulchan says, don't look for shtusim. Don't have silly cheshbonos when it comes to doing mitzvahs. You do a mitzvah simple and right, you never know the ramifications it could have. Thank you very much for listening. Wonderful.
If someone's obviously not a common question, it's an important moment.
Thank you. I'll try to get it to you.
That's for the movie.
Huh?
I thought this time we saw him, he was happy to bring him to this field, but he's not my mother.
You watched?
Driving by this.
You were born now?
Did not do it specifically. You wouldn't do it. He was too good. He was like, I don't have to do this anymore. Like, I don't. So he was there, and I asked him.